Here with more is Andrij Dobriansky from the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, Chair of UN Affairs, the Ukrainian World Congress. It's always good to see you. It's interesting to see how Zelensky worded that after meeting with Dan Driscoll, right after everything we were hearing about this plan. What do you make?
Well, we saw Dan Driscoll all over the news this weekend before his trip to Europe. He was actually talking up the incredible innovations that are happening on the Ukrainian battlefield. So that clearly was a meeting that was planned with two four-star generals to go to Ukraine to have a serious conversation about the state of the war. The proposal by Witkoff, seemingly unrelated to that, but a lot of information online spreading that these people were there to force, two generals were there to force Zelensky to sign something. Zelensky was there to talk about the state of the war and what the future cooperation will be. So as far as this 28-point plan, neither Secretary Rubio kind of sent a tweet out that's very vague about him being involved in it, but not really, and that we need to work forward. And nobody really from Congress, Lindsey Graham, Joe Wilson, no committee chairs had any knowledge of this. Less even so the European allies. Those are the allies that are going to be guaranteeing the peace. So much like the proposal for the Middle East, you got to work with the Arab countries around you to make sure that the Gaza is settled.
Now, we don't have all 28 points, but and to your point, there's a lot we don't know. But on the screen here, I'll put up the Trump administration's plan as it's known and being reported by the likes of Axios and the Financial Times, with full control for Russia of the Donbass, and on down the bullet points go, where Russia will withdraw from the Donbass areas it controls, become like a DMZ. The characterization, we can leave this up for a second, but the characterization of this was basically like, all right, this is a lot for Ukraine to give up, as Trump kind of throwing them under the bus. So what did you think when you were first reading through it?
We've seen all of these points before. We've heard it in 2022 from Putin. We heard it in 23, 24. From Putin. This is the same line from Putin. And by the way, Putin had a speech today also. He dressed up in his military uniform and met with generals. He said, we're going ahead with our war. We keep attacking. Our goals are the same. So that's not the same message that we're getting from Zelensky, who's always open to meeting with either Secretary Driscoll or talking to Witkoff or what have you. Unfortunately, Steve Witkoff is putting this plan together, as far as we know, with a Russian emissary who was in Miami for a week earlier this month, and not having visited Ukraine yet.
Yeah, not having visited, right? The White House today, Caroline Leavitt said they're negotiating with both sides. It's not just Russia. On the map here of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we highlight all the time the area that we've assessed that Russia controls, right? And the Russian advances. Here, let me throw out one possibility. So obviously you're talking about all this space in here.
Right.
So if Trump is, if these reports are right, throwing it out that Ukraine might have to give up even more than that in order to get security guarantees, isn't that possible that that's part of the negotiation? I was talking to Bill Taylor, the former ambassador, about this earlier in the show, and at the end of the day, Trump and the U.S., they want to end up right back there at these lines, which maybe wouldn't be acceptable to some people in Ukraine. I get it, but maybe that's the goal in all of this.
Well, if you go further into those lines, what Russia is proposing in its 28-point plan now, but otherwise before, is that they haven't been able to cross certain natural land barriers. There are some rivers, some mountains that divide those states that they occupy. And they're saying we want the entire state. Well, when you get the entire state, then you don't have a natural barrier. And we're talking about more defensive fortification. Who's doing that? Is it Europe? Is it the United States? If you freeze it where it is right now, where Russia only occupies half of those states and even less of the ones further south, then at least you have a natural demarcation. The landmines are in place, the dragon's teeth blocking the tanks. So what Russia's asking for now is more than that, and also getting a strategic position to fire their artillery directly at Kyiv from there even further.
Okay, but if they're asking for more than that, maybe the counter, and I don't know the details of what Zelensky just talked about today, is less than that, or maybe it gets back to here and it's, as Ambassador Taylor said, kind of de facto Russian control of some of these areas that they already control, but not officially part of Russia.
Right.
And is something like that a negotiation that's reasonable?
We've had a lot of peace negotiations over the years in Europe where there's been de facto recognition, not de jure recognition. Right. The United States, the questionable part here is that it's the Trump administration and Mike Pompeo that made a declaration in 2018 that the United States will never recognize occupied territory by Russia in Ukraine. So it's his own policy that he's kind of have to vaulting over. But the other parts that aren't focused on, because people talk about the land swaps, is there's also like, let's not prosecute Putin for stealing 20,000 Ukrainian children. Let's not do any war crimes prosecution, any of these Russian soldiers that have been raping people across. So it's a lot of let's wash our hands and be done with this. But as we all know from the peace process in the Middle East or what has happened in Ukraine since 2014, This is only, if you freeze it now and you don't deal with it and you don't put people to jail, you don't prosecute, this is only going to come back. Some people say if you do this, you have war in 5 years. I say it's war in 2 or 3 years.
How much of this, in your view, I know what you want, I have an idea at least of what you want to happen. Do you think if Trump wants to impose and get aggressive with some of this, he's going to be able to impose on Ukraine and force them to accept? Are you worried?
Well, some of the things also that are mentioning, and this gets to your point, is that they would have an election within the first 100, 150 days in Ukraine. Yeah. Obviously, the talking point by Russia is that Zelensky's not elected and he can't be the president. But this is who you would be having to talk to. You'd be talking about changing, as Zelensky famously said to President Trump, I don't decide what the borders are, the Constitution does. So how do you change the Constitution? There's a war going on. Russia won't even agree to a ceasefire, and it's been 250 days since Ukraine said, sure, we'll give you 30 days of ceasefire. So it's Ukraine that's constantly being the partner that wants to work. But for some reason, Witkoff comes in and says, I want even more from you, when you're really not putting the screws to Russia. No, that's the complaint from the Ukrainian side. We've heard over and over. Andrij, thank you. Andrij Dobriansky with us, represents Ukrainian interests and does so very well, I might add. Now,